and welcome to Mirador Television. We are the biggest little TV in the world, based in Lewes, East Sussex in England. Our aim is to entertain and to spice things up a little. We will also keep an eye on the local politics, because let's face it, someone has to. Our programs range from stories about the local people to stories about people from all the way across the pond. Brought to you by our wonderful colleagues in New York. So why not sit back, relax with your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is Mirador Television.
Well, good morning. It's Monday morning blues, I'm afraid, in many respects. Perhaps the most important issue that I have to talk to you about today, and I have many important issues, is that if you can spot behind me the portrait painted by the delightful local artist, Nora Leslie Hills, or actually it's Leslie Nora Hills. There we go. Jack DeManio is revisited. Is somebody has kidnapped the scarf. There are two things which are sacred to me. One is the hat and the other is the scarf. And the scarf has been kidnapped. Now, I wish I could offer a reward. I haven't had any ransom demands yet. But if you spot anybody with this scarf, or you spot the scarf itself, it is missing. And it's almost like me being naked. God forbid you should see that. Oh, there's some pictures of me a little bit exposed, shall we say, in our weather build-up. But I feel totally and utterly exposed without the scarf. And actually, nobody recognizes without the scarf. So there is a scarf napping appeal out if you see this scarf, which is fairly distinctive. Please get in touch. The poor thing hates it away from home, and I hate being without. So that is the biggest story of the day. The second biggest is probably that Mirador will have to retract or retrench and give you only a skeleton service, which is more or less giving you now, because a lot of the good programs that we were doing before Christmas, or not before Christmas, but before this latest lockdown in January, we've not been able to do them. They take skilled people. And while I can very roughly do the edits on a lot of this stuff, they take time, and you can't do everything. And Mirador is, like a lot of other businesses, is in a bit of a mess. It's hanging on by its fingernails. And I might as well say that this morning I'm going to take a look at some of the things which are under fire in our society and which we need to address post-COVID. And we need to address them. No mouthing, no nonsense. No, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And my God, we've got the king and the queen and so on and so forth behind it. No, real action on the ground is required in many areas. And at long last, because of the Sarah Everard instance, which spilled over to Brighton, then we need to look at two things. Number one, attitude towards finding any emotional issue to latch onto so we can misbehave. Not very popular, that view? Well, don't care. And the other is that our policing system, I don't care whether you're talking about Met. The Met comes under the spotlight because it's got a huge city, millions of people to look after. Our own Sussex police has a great rural area for responsibility, not the same sort of responsibilities, but demands the same sort of policing, and it isn't there. And I'm sorry, we've gone along with an awful lot, but I mean, this latest ruse that all policemen within a short period of time should have a degree, that's great. When you face a mob who are misbehaving, and you have no idea except for what you said in your degree, then yeah, I don't know how such thinking can possibly creep in to policing. The fact is, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. And you can talk about television, You can talk about local councils. You can talk about the NHS. You can talk about any number of things in the commercial and private sector. Is if you haven't got experience, you don't know how to handle it. And there is nothing at the moment in our society that values experience. We value all sorts of things. Everybody should have a degree. Burble, burble, burble. What absolute rubbish that is. Who thought that up? Oh, well, a lot came out of the very strange thinking of the Blair era. But there we go. You can't just blame one man. Yes, you can. But what happened in London with the Sarah Everard, let us all get together for a vigil, is it triggered emotions. And suddenly they burst the banks. And Paul Fowle, an ex-policeman as well as a banker, has been on this program, and he appears twice a week. And he has warned that there is something bubbling there. There is a boiling point. And on Saturday, I think we saw that boiling point, that bubble over. And as a consequence, we need now to sit down and take a long look at what our society is all about. We don't do that. There is no thinking. There's no innovation. What we've got is a bunch of people who can follow the rule book. They can follow the forms, but there is no innovation. The government has said recently that it's going to pour some money into scientific thinking so that we can get together scientists and put them all together and let them have a think tank to see what sort of problems we can envisage in the future and how to handle them. But we need that in everything. We need that in our society. And actually, God bless him. Oh, raw though he may be, and getting under everybody's skin though he may, is Boris said, and I have quoted this so many times, Boris said just before lockdown, is our entire governance system is not fit for purpose, right from the very top down to the local councils, and not just local councils, but the parish councils. It is not fit for purpose. And if anything is starting to become true, is our governance is not fit for purpose. This television station will cling on because I'm a great fan of Galaxy Quest, and it brings messages from outer space, from the Thermians. But if you're not familiar with Galaxy Quest, it is a classic comedy, basically about people who are part of a show like the Enterprise series on television, and some aliens have been following them and think that it's absolutely true and want them to go and help stave off invaders. It's a very funny movie, but the aliens are never give up, never surrender. And because I'm stupid enough to actually watch some of these things from time to time and get hooked on a particular movie, not many, but I do get hooked on them, I've used that as what shall I say, a motto for some time. Never give up, never surrender. So Mirador is not going to give up. It is not going to surrender. It will keep a skeleton service going. There will be something each day. It won't be as pretty as it has been. But I'm sorry, but lack of government support. And I am beginning to really think, even though I have put this question to the local MP, and she has said that she supports local media and most certainly isn't part of anything to try and close us down. But the record in Lewis is pretty sad. Viva's gone. Town and County is struggling. We're struggling. The radio comes out of Eastbourne. The rest comes out of everywhere else except Lewis. There is no local media left. And the headlines the other day in the paper reflected what was said 4 years ago and which we've been saying for 4 years on this television channel. And that is that as local media shrinks, so local administration, in other words, the local councils, get worse, and the cost, that is the council tax, goes up. Well, you've got a classic. We are a classic. You can hold us up to the rest of the world and say, there you are. There's a society that has got it all wrong. and I'm afraid that while we were led to believe we might get some stuff, some support, is, it's funny. I don't pay my council tax. I get a notice through within 24 hours, you haven't paid your council tax, right? I ask if we can get some support, and there is a vague indication, well, we'll take a look at it. And 3 months later, after a whole host of bureaucratic rubbish, we still don't know. We still don't know. And the indications are that once again, there's going to be something in there that will stop small operations like us in the media, particularly in the media, from getting help. And nobody wants to know how the media works. I've never been approached by anybody, nobody in authority, to say, hey, Keith, you're trying to get some money out of the government, because everybody else has, is what is it that's different about media, particularly small media? Nobody is asked. And if I try to offer any suggestions, I'm sneered at, told to go away, pack your bags. Well, we're not going to pack our bags. We're not. We are. Never give up, never surrender. It is too important that free speech is maintained in this country, because we can see erosion of it all the way around. Our dear old Mick Symes, who runs Lewis Present on Facebook, is fighting a battle with a lady who had her post removed, not by Mick, but by Google or Facebook or whoever on earth runs these things. They didn't like something she said, so out it went. But she blames him. And that's very typical. The big boys don't mind the little guys taking the blame, taking the flak. They're big enough to write it out. Well, we're not, except for the toughness and the stubbornness of if I may say, Piers Morgan. And thank God, one of my colleagues, and I value his opinion greatly because I worked with him many years ago, and I know that he is a good journalist. But when I said, it is disgraceful what happened to Piers Morgan because of influence from a royal or an ex-royal or a film star, that it hastened his demise. A man who called the shots. Actually, he was a bit like Paxman, the popular Paxman, if you like. Because Paxo really had a go at people to find out what's going on. I like to think that we're in a very, very mild way, because I know we're as clever as those two chaps, but that we do try to do the same. But poor old Mick got the blame for this. 3 or 4 years ago, we submitted a piece of video, or we were transferring a piece of video, and Google blocked it for obscenity. Do you know what it was? It was the War Memorial in Lewis, because there are ladies sculpted around the bottom in a very graceful way with nice, soft sort of material over a breast. Obscene, said Google. And the fact that we are censored by these big, big organizations who are responsible to nobody is just, it just shows what's happening. But all others are climbing on the bandwagon. We don't want independent media. We don't want people taking a look. We don't want people looking at the scrutiny committee at Lewis District Council. We don't want people asking, is any money going because of our pairing with Eastbourne now? Is any money going from the Lewis coffers to Eastbourne? Eastbourne at the moment, with threatened bankruptcy, going bust if it doesn't get government help. How do we know? Because there are only us'ns left to ask. Nobody else asks. Thank God that we've got somebody who understands the system and is able to pinpoint things for us. Incidentally, one disturbing thing is that our rate of coronavirus went up over the weekend. Not substantially. Well, I mean, it depends whether you want on percentage, but it's from a low base. But nonetheless, it went up, not down. We increased in cases. So if we think that we are absolutely whiter than white in this town, which we often do, well, it really is something that needs to be addressed by us, the citizens. And how do we do it? If the voices are taken away. And the voices are being taken away, bit by bit by bit, with the connivance of government, central and local. All right. AstraZeneca jab. I had the AstraZeneca jab, and I got a call from a friend in Switzerland who said, Keith, I'm very concerned because in talking about how we were handling it, and I was discussing with him how things were in Zurich, and he said, I remember you said you got the AstraZeneca jab, and blood clots are now associated with it. Well, apparently the 3 or 4, particularly in Greece, I think it was, have been associated with it. But there's been a denial that it's not dangerous, any more dangerous. That blood clots can come from other reasons. If you happen to have the AstraZeneca jab, it's coincidence. And may I say this also? I've had lots and lots and lots of friends, colleagues, and so on all over say, "Oh, I'm up for the jab. What should I be worried about?" Well, I didn't even know I'd had it. I went down and I walked in Saturday morning. The two ladies were very, very attractive. So I started to chat to them, as my wont when there are lovely, attractive, much younger ladies around, because that's all I can do is talk. And we were having a nice chat. And one of them said, "Put out your arm," which I did. I was chatting to the other. And then she said, "Okay, you can go now." I'd had the damn jab and didn't even know. Side effects? The next day, I had a bit of a headache, and I did feel a bit listless. But that's all. There were no violent effects, and I've had none since. I had much more trouble with my eye, actually, which was operated on just before the pandemic. Well, it wasn't. It was after the pandemic started, but before the jabs were made available. We really do have to worry about having a watchdog for our society, and that's what we try to be. People don't know about us, and there's no reason why they should. That's our fault. We haven't done a good enough job on telling people who we are and what we are. And I'll tell you in a minute or two who we are and what we are. But let's take a look at where we come from and what we're about, because this is a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. It's got a great history. You want a capsule of English history? Lewis is the place to come. It's all happened here. We are the seat of English democracy and therefore democracy around the world. We are the seat. This is where it all happened. History books don't pay too much attention to what happened here because they happened with people who weren't particularly nice people. But they did start the first flames of democratic processes in the United Kingdom. No, not in the United Kingdom, in England, which then spread. And what's this place about? Well, take a look, and then you take a look at what Mirador is about, and why I am the mouth that roared, and why I'm shouting off at the moment. And I'm really fed up that there was such lack of support for the democratic process through the only television operation, which is local, within miles. There's one in Brighton, but it goes west. It doesn't come east. It goes out to Hove and Arundel and so on. We, on the other hand, try very hard to make sure that East Sussex is looked after. So there you are. There are lots of things that I want to talk about this morning because, yes, let me say it, I am pissed off. I am mightily pissed off. And if we are going to have any chance whatsoever of putting our society back together again after we come out of lockdown, then we've got to start thinking about it now and talking about it. Mental health is a disgrace. I read and I hear people talking about mental health on a day-to-day basis. Oh dear, oh it's dreadful. Look at all this mental health. What do we do about it? Well, we put 12 billion pounds into the kitty, and I'll be damned if I can see where it's spent, because I try to look after somebody who is mentally stressed. So I've been to a tribunal. I've been into the facility in Eastbourne. You wouldn't want to spend 5 minutes there. I've talked to the police over sectioning. I've talked to the doctors. Everybody wants to run it in the opposite direction. Nobody actually wants to do something, although they all want to talk about, we've got a problem and we should do something about it. Well, do something about it then. Get together a few people, get together citizens groups or whatever. And if you say, well, we've got charities, I found the charities, I'm not saying they don't do a good job in a particular area, but when I phoned for advice, the first thing they said is, are you safe? I'm not calling about me, I'm calling about this lady that I'm trying to look after. No, but are you safe? And when I assured them they were, well, we can't help, go to this charity. And the next charity said the same thing. If they're doing such a great job, then start telling us and start allowing those people who are involved in them know how to get hold of them. That's where the money should be spent if we're spending 12 billion quid. Dear, dear, dear. Get me off it. Well, that is Lewis, and that is Mirador. Let me tell you about Lewis, first of all. It's a beautiful, beautiful little town, tucked away in the South Downs, in the shadow of the South Downs. It's about 5 miles inland from the Channel and about 5 miles from the major city of Brighton, which is a holiday resort, and about another 5 or so from Eastbourne, which is a much calmer, sedate place, but also a holiday resort. This is the county town, and the Battle of Lewis in 1264 was what sparked democracy. It was the first time that a council of elected nobles, yes, wasn't exactly what we would understand today, but nonetheless, elected nobles joined those appointed by the king to make sure that he just didn't have his own way. And that battle was fought here, and with thousands and thousands of men dead. I mean, in recent times, we keep digging them up from that battle. It was a huge, huge moment in British history. People know about Magna Carta, but in fact, Magna Carta is quite controversial. King John never signed it. People say, well, royalty never signed in those days anyway. But beside the point, the fact is that nobody was paying any attention to it. And that was the reason that Simon de Montfort and some of the barons said, hey, come on, stop your nonsense, stop the spending. You're spending our money on all sorts of things that we don't approve of. And that triggered the Battle of Lewes, which took place about a mile from where I'm sitting at the moment in our studio, the Albert Street studio. And then we had the martyrs who were burned at the stake here, 17 of them. They were burned in other parts of the country as well, but there were 17 burned in Lewes, and which are today remembered. And the whole point of why they were burned, for religious freedom, is carried on by the bonfire societies, who on November the 5th, and for the first time in a long time, couldn't this year because of the pandemic, put on a spectacular as a memorial to the martyrs who were trying very hard to demonstrate their religious freedom. And they paid with their lives in a very horrible way. They were burned at the stake, but they were put into tar barrels. And that's a particularly horrible part. And that was because of bloody Queen Mary, who decided that she wanted to restore Catholicism to Britain, having been taken away by Henry VIII. And so Lewes, once again, was the centre of rebellion. And then Tom Paine, who rebelled against the whole idea of the divine right of kings, who in fact named the House of Commons. He didn't actually name it. What he said was there should be in that place, pointing to Westminster, an assembly called the House of Commons, where the common man could be. Well, what have we got now? A House of Commons. Dear old Tom Paine went off to the United States, which he named, according to Bill Bryson, the historian. He named the United States and helped the Boston rebels to fire the shots that started the War of Independence. He was some pup. And we've had people in the past, in Lewes, in the more recent past, who have stamped their little feet. And I'm one of those people that's stamping their little feet, except I'm nowhere near as important or powerful as either Simon de Montfort or Tom Paine. But nonetheless, someone's got to stamp their little feet and say, why aren't we taking a look at what's happening, particularly now that COVID has highlighted a number of things. And going back to the Sarah Everard is, first of all, we have become a society that just wants to embrace anything. And a lot of the people who decided they would have a vigil for just about anything they could possibly lay their hands on. It's some sort of a communal coziness that we can say boo to something. I am not saying that they don't have genuine feelings, that these sort of things have got to be brought to the attention of the establishment. Of course they do, but they just grab onto anything and the way they march without any thought about anything else. If there's a great surge in the virus now, oh, it won't be their fault. But anyway, it was all done in a good cause. But then that highlights also the fact that the police have got themselves into a right bloody muck. They have in London and they have down here. Brighton was subject to very similar scenes as took place in London on the weekend, where the police actually started to lock up demonstrators who were mostly women and who were there for a vigil. Going back to mental health, I've talked to the police and they say we're in the unhappy situation of having to deal with it because nobody else wants to. So if somebody is deemed mentally ill, it's we that have to go and fulfill the sectioning. We that have to go and take them and charge them. And we are ill-trained and ill-prepared for it. But nobody else is trained for it either. The supermarkets are once again, delightful people. In my local supermarket, I get along with all of them. Have a little chat at the checkout. But they don't know how to handle somebody who's mentally strained. So those people come along and they're a bit difficult. So what they do is they throw them through the front door with a security man and they bar them. Oh, well, that was good treatment, wasn't it? Yeah. They're not trained. So where the hell is this 12 billion quid going? I don't know. And since the next king, King William, is now heading up mental health research and various charities, I would appeal to him please ask that a root and branch investigation is taken place of how we handle these things. It's just like foreign aid. Everybody says, oh dear, we're paying these billions and billions, 7% of GDP or whatever it is, abroad. And if we try to stop it, look at the nasty things we're doing to these poor people. Well, yeah, but I've been on site. I've experienced our foreign aid, and it's run by a bunch of dickheads in the main. So if you really want your money misspent without anything, but just so you feel good, don't examine what we're doing. Just let this money flow out of the country for so-called foreign aid. Oh, it's easy to generalize, I know. In everything that I've said, there are good people, there are good organizations, there are worthy organizations, there are people who really want to do the right thing. But, the fact is, they are outweighed by a bureaucracy that doesn't understand, that puts its pals in charge, and then wipes his hands and says, statistically, look what we're doing. We're spending 12 billion quid. Why am I ranting and raving this morning like this on a Monday morning? Or 2 minutes past 8? Because it looks as if we are going to be a victim of the rotten administration that we've got, that is part of the governance of this country now, which needs examining, which needs turning root and branch. And if he should pay attention to anything after this, and if he learns a lesson, then Boris should do that, because he said he was going to before we had the pandemic, and it certainly needs it. The NHS. Doctors and nurses are terrific. I'm really quite happy with the standard that we get in the main from our doctors and nurses. But the administration, the NHS itself, is lousy. I mean, it sends you letters to remind you that you got an appointment yesterday. It loses. In my case, it actually lost my skeleton. I went, because I've got Parkinson's, I went in the initial stages so they could find out where this was likely to attack me. I went and I got into one of these space capsules and I was scanned and so on and so forth. And thank God they didn't lose my skull, but they lost the rest of my skeleton. It's floating around in the NHS vault somewhere. But Stephen Catlin has been, they've discovered that what they did in 2016, because he had a gallstone problem, it was of no use. He needed further treatment. They only discovered in 2021. And the poor man has been in pain. No, there are lots of things which need to be looked at the NHS administration bureaucratic level, not at the medical level. I stress that. Doctors and nurses are worth every penny that they're, with the exception, I think, of some of those who work in the mental health wards. But nonetheless, that's another fight with them. Royalty. Look, it doesn't matter about all these spats that they're having at the moment, and whether they're looking at inside the family and so on and so forth. It's a great importance placed on the family, on the firm. Basically, we are a constitutional monarchy, and the constitutional monarchy is probably the best form of government that you can get anywhere. And that's not me saying it, and it's not just people in this country saying it who are experts in governance, but Socrates said it, and Plato said it in his Republic, that the form of government we have in this country is by far the best. Not perfect, but it's by far the best. And we want to tamper with it. Why? Because there's a spat within the household? Get on with your spat. And leave the Queen as head of state to do her duties without us attacking her as head of state. Attacking her as a grandmother and so on, of a family that's become dysfunctional? Well, maybe. That's up to you. But as head of state, she is immaculate. And constitutional monarchy is, in my view, the only form of safe government that safeguards you from everything, and particularly from the overthrow of government by rebels or those who would seek to use violence to overturn a legitimate government. Hey. The high street. Oh, we say what we're going to do about it. As individuals, where do we go and do our shopping? At the big supermarkets. We don't really look after the high street, and yet we mourn it when it's disappeared. Because what we're beginning to realize is that the pubs and the shops, the small shops, were the places where we actually went for social intercourse. We chatted to the butcher, and we chatted to the other people who were in there for meat. We chatted to the greengrocer. And we talked about whether the apples were ripe at the right time of year. And we sympathized with somebody who had got a rotten apple. They were all part of our fabric, our social fabric, and they're disappearing. And do we care? No. Until, and suddenly we get people who want to go on a vigil for something. I'm not denigrating the fact they want to go on a vigil. I just think that they don't think it through. There are so many things that are happening in our society that have become evident because of COVID. Let me tell you now that a year ago I was, if you like, a fat and sassy middle class gentleman. I had a bit of money in the bank. I was able to do nice things. I was running a business which was pottering along and not doing too badly. And then wham, bam, COVID came along and decimated me. I barely got enough left to buy any food today because I've supported with my money this outlet, this voice, which I hope could be the voice of the people. Will it be? I don't know. So this rant, oh, it's been going on now. I'm sorry, but this morning is, since I may not be here on Wednesday, not in this form anyway, is I'm taking this last opportunity to say, well, why aren't we thinking about our society? Because we're not, actually. Because we've been told to stay at home and do remote, we're not talking to each other. We haven't been able to. Are we going to when we come out of lockdown? The first bits of coming out of lockdown are starting to show. Yeah, I can't get my hair cut here, but if I went across the border into Wales, I could. But those are some of the anomalies. But the COVID crisis has, in my view, and the view of a lot of people, demonstrated a lot of things that are wrong with our society. And I honestly believe, I hope, that we are not going to settle for second best and just lapse back into the bad old ways once we are totally out. I hope that the citizens will start to think about what they're doing. Their vote starts to become important. Is the form of governance that we've got at the moment the right form of governance? Should we be asking questions? And that's not marching in the streets with signs and causing disruption. What we've really got to do is to get forums going. Fora? Yeah. Yes, I think going back to my Latin, forum. We've got to get discussion going and debate going. Something like Mirador is a good focal point. But then people want to watch television for entertainment, don't they? So it's little organizations like us that try to look at things that are serious and sensible. Well, I don't know, I'm sure. I haven't told you what the weather is going to be today after all that. 5 degrees the low, 11 degrees the high. And it's going to be a scattered cloud, but plenty of sunshine around during the day. And it'll be sort of breezy, but not too bad. Let me look at the magic tree. Yeah, it's rocking a bit. So watch out. Watch out if you've got this sort of hat. And can I, on the back of the weather, put out an appeal because my scarf has been kidnapped. I have no idea where it's gone. I've searched the house high and low. It's not there. I've looked around in the places that I've been. Very few, of course, because we can't travel too much. I've looked around the office. Can I find it? No, I cannot. And where it is, I have no idea. And I feel naked without it. Well, naked Keith is not a pretty sight. I can assure you. You wouldn't want to see me. And let's just, for the want of 8:10, here is a little thing that we did 4 years ago when Mirador first started. about Lewis, and the quality isn't that great, but it might appeal to you. Well, it ain't bustling anymore, but let's hope it gets back to bustling times, because it was a beautiful little market town. It had got a heart, it had got spirit. People who proudly call themselves Louisians, who were born here, do have a special spirit. And I don't resent the fact that I'm considered by that group to be an outsider. They're very generous people. They're very nice people. They believe very strongly in this town. And I believe that they should. And I join them in that, even though I'm only 30 years of being a Louisian. Getting back the spirit of Lewis, getting back the spirit of 1264, getting back the spirit of Tom Paine in the late 1700s. Those are the things which we should strive towards. Making this our slogan for a little while was shout it loud, Lewis is great. Shout it loud, Lewis is great. But we've not only got to shout it, we've got to make it so, and we can. Not under the present leadership, I fear. But that's fixable. As long as we've got the policy, if you like, if we've got the feeling that what we want to do is to make Lewis great again, because it was. It was the key town. During the English Civil War, the Royalists who were camped in Arundel marched here from Chichester on the hope that they could actually take Lewis and therefore win East Sussex for the king. They were intercepted at Haywards Heath. Nobody knows that there was a Battle of Haywards Heath. Well, it's actually the Battle of Muster Hill, but that's that little park that's on the edge as you go into Haywards Heath. The Battle of Haywards Heath, where the Royalists were intercepted, and they never by a force from nearby, from one of the villages nearby, and they were stopped from getting here because Lewis was such a prize, because it was partly a centre for Puritans and Puritanism, which is the big support for Oliver Cromwell. We were important. And there's no reason why we can't be important again as governance changes, except I fear that there are too many motivations for people to be in politics nowadays. Let's do away with party politics or local politics anyway, or local governance. It can work. There are good examples of it in other parts of the world. It can work. A non-partisan association or a non-partisan makeup of a council. Worth thinking about. If I do nothing else this morning, I hope that I'll, even if you only tap in for a minute or 2 minutes, what you do is you actually take a moment to say, yeah, that bit strikes a chord. The rest of you speaking is maybe rubbish, and you're perfectly entitled to absolutely think that I'm spouting all rubbish. I don't mind. The fact is, I still have the right in this democratic society of ours to spout rubbish. But if they do away with all these tiny little magazines and so on that people think are inconsequential. Tiny little radio stations, tiny little television stations. He won't have a voice much longer. Certainly not a local voice. Disappointing to say the least. It's 16 minutes past 8 o'clock on Monday, the 15th. Monday, the 15th of March, 2021. I hope that doesn't mark the passing of Mirador television. It won't mark the passing totally, but let me just tell you about Mirador before the lockdown in late December. We were broadcasting, first of all, to every part of the world. You could get Mirador television on a television set that was streamed by any of the big streaming companies like Roku, Amazon Fire, and so on and so forth. You could get it on your phones. You could get it almost everywhere in the world. Which meant that you could get it everywhere in the news, of course. We had a local channel. We were able to try to connect and do important things for the local community. And we had 4 people in this office, in this studio, and we had another dozen or so associated with us, either heading programs, doing research, getting bits and pieces together. It was a vital, throbbing, wonderful little operation. Not everybody's cup of tea, didn't expect it to be. And it was growing with its audience. It went from a few hundred a year ago to where, in fact, it had 15,000 the moment that COVID hit. And then the first thing, of course, is that people change their habits. And also, nobody can advertise or sponsor or pay the sort of money, little though it is, to keep something like this going. And why should they? It's commercial. They want value for money. So the audience is slumped. Now there is every indication that we are starting to hit the right formula again, and we're marching onwards and upwards. The audiences are beginning to increase. The only problem is that we haven't got the money to expand. We've got wonderful plans, terrific plans, but it all needs just a little bit of cash, and we haven't got it. We spent our money trying to get a really good operation going, and we did, and it was going to flourish. It was flourishing. It was beginning to make its mark, and then wham, COVID hit, and like a lot of other businesses, we were hit. So I'm very down this morning, but also I can't be just down about this television station. I have to be down about a lot of the other things that I've mentioned: local governance, the police, the NHS, a whole host of things, and people who. Good morning, Gary. Gary Toynton, a very faithful viewer who has just joined us, and we have, as a society, a lot of thinking to do. Will we do it? I fear not. We will get involved in the emotional things, such as the vigil for Sarah Everard, as we saw it on Saturday night. And what did that do? Conflict. Okay, so we're going to take a second look at the police, but really we're going to look at their actions on that night. We're not going to look to see whether, in fact, policing as we know it today is satisfactory for our time. People say it is because they've changed. Basically, they use motor cars instead of walking the beat. But you know, some things, as the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the old part of the old style of policing wasn't broke. We shouldn't fix it. Dear. Never mind. Just a little bit of a worry because Well, COVID, we've got a little bit of an upturn into this. Not much, but we've still got an upturn. And that's something that we just have to be very careful about, because if there is a bit of an upturn, it could turn into a big upturn because we don't know what causes that. But the moment that we think that we're going to come out of it, we start to be incautious. Yes, like the rest of the country. We've plummeted in the number of infections, certainly the number of deaths. But the moment that we start to get an increase, even if it's a tiny increase, then we must be very careful. And there's no sense in pointing at the medical people. They're doing a marvelous job, particularly with the vaccine. And for those of you who have read about blood clots and so on and so forth, well, you may say that something's gone to his brain. It's gone to his head this morning. I haven't had the Astrogenic shot. I'm okay. And I mispronounced that, AstraZeneca shot. If that's what you've had, I wouldn't worry about it. And if you're worried, if you're ready for you, a lot of people have sort of said, "Oh, I got my shot. I wonder what's going to happen." Believe me, it's a non-event. You go in, you give your name, they go, "Good," and out you go again. And sometimes the next day you just feel not like kicking up your heels. But you can't anyway right now. So it's nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about at all. But if we have got a rise, be very careful. Maintain the social distancing. One of the things that really has bothered me a little bit is because I go around and I'm a professional observer, really. That's what I've been doing all my life. So I see perhaps other things that others don't. But it's amazing how the big supermarkets can get away with things. Waitrose, for instance, had and have had for a long time a nice little package of ham, processed ham, for £1. It's good for sandwiches, but also the cat likes it. It was a cat treat. Suddenly, it's disappeared from the shelves, and it's not just that they've put a different price on the same thing. They haven't. It's not there, and I just find it very difficult to rationalise when some of these big organisations say that they are doing everything they can to assist us getting us through lockdown. They would pull a stunt like that. They also esoteric things, I suppose. Is I had to pick up carrot juice for a while for people, and the carrot juice would fluctuate wildly between 80 pence for a bottle to £2.20 for the same bottle. Now that's not putting the thing on special. You don't take a £2.20 bottle of carrot juice and reduce it to 80 pence as a special. It's just an inflationary price that, since inflation is measured by a basket of goods, it's the sort of thing that we need to keep an eye on and to be aware of. And the other thing I think is the banking system. The banking system has got to be refueled, recharged. It's rubbish. They say that they're helping, but they're not. The bankers have abandoned their tasks to computers. They just let them get on with it, and that what is fed into the computer is not fit for purpose. In fact, if anything, if it wasn't an inanimate object, you could actually charge a computer with harassment. They don't care. You try and get hold of a bank because you want to talk to them. Our hours are between 6 and 8. They stay open a little bit later, right? And we're closed on a Sunday and so on. So when does a computer call you? On a Sunday. Yeah. What's good for the goose is not often good for the gander, unfortunately. There are lots and lots of things which we need to take a look at. And it's up to the citizen. If Mirador is still going when this all ends properly, I think that we will invite people to become members of a focus group, if that's what you want to call it, but a group to take a look at iniquities that we can actually highlight and start to get some answers from people. Sometimes the things that I bitterly complain about are totally legitimate. I only see it from one point of view. But questions need to be asked and answers need to be given. And then that's either reassurance or it's an opportunity for us to say, right, okay, that patently isn't in the interest of the citizenry. It isn't in the interest of the community. It isn't in the interest of the people. So let's see some change, or at least discussion of change. 8:27. Well, I doubt it many of you have stayed with me this morning. But just let me remind you who we are before we go, because I think it is important for you to know what Lewis is all about, or what this area is all about, and what Mirador is all about. Well, it's now 8:29 and time for me to go and be a curmudgeon and a nuisance elsewhere. Well, I'm that anyway, without us having lockdown. But let's hear the voices. Let's hear properly that we want change. Visuals and so on are all well and good. I'm not. If you want to go and vigil. But actually, they're forgotten very quickly. What we really need is movement for permanent change, and permanent change for better, to make our society a good and just society, which it is patently not at the moment. And it's taken a bug, a pandemic, to make us realize it. It is 8:30, and I'm going to say goodbye. I hope that it's not permanent. No, we'll be here until at least Wednesday. But then we have to consider where we're at, where we're going, whether in fact we have to cut our cloth and just simply go back to where we started 4 years ago. But that the pandemic has done that. But Galaxy Quest, never give up, never surrender. And we bloody well aren't going to at Mirador. We're going to try and keep at it so that we can come back to being a healthy company, making great contributions to our community and doing it in style and with panache and with just a little bit of backing, just a few bob behind us. Until tomorrow, or probably perhaps things later today, Keith Hayes, Mirador Television. Toodle pip.